Good evening. My name is Daniel Schreiner. I'm one of the pastors at Hinson Baptist Church in Portland, Oregon. Thank you for joining us tonight. Oh, yeah, sure. Good evening. My name is Daniel Schreiner. I'm one of the pastors at Hinson Baptist Church in Portland, and I'm going to be your MC for this virtual First Image Gala. We aren't starting the program quite yet. Finish up dinner, wash your hands yet again, and get ready for our program to begin. Just a couple of housekeeping things though before we begin the countdown. If you're having technical issues or have any issues whatsoever, personal problems, you can email events@first-image.org and we will do our best to respond as soon as possible. Second, hopefully you receive packets in the mail or with your gift basket. There's information in there that will be helpful to you as the evening goes along, as well as a response card for the end of the program.
Hi, my name is Ashley Bell, and I am the Global and Local Outreach Pastor at Cedar Mill Bible Church. And Cedar Mill is a proud financial supporter of the ministry of First Image. And we believe that First Image truly reflects and displays the heart of God as they minister to women across the city. So it's an honor and a privilege for me to welcome you to the virtual gala. And so before we get started, please join me in prayer. Lord, we thank you so much for who you are, for your sovereignty and for your love and for your kindness, for your mercy and for your redemption. Lord, we just ask that you would just bless this event tonight. Lord, that your favor would rest upon it, that you plant the seeds of generosity in our hearts, that we would give out of a mentality of abundance and not out of a mentality of scarcity, Father. I ask that you would bless every one of our speakers, Lord, that you would just give them confidence, Lord, that you would fill them with your Holy Spirit, Lord, and that they would speak with peace and calmness, Lord. I pray that, Father, in each and every person, we would just be able to see and experience tangibly your redemptive hope and power. Lord, I thank you for the staff at First Image, Lord. I just pray that you continue to give them wisdom, that you continue to give them discernment as to how to do a much needed ministry that is from your heart in this city. Lord, we thank you for all that you have done and all that you are doing and all that you will do in and through First Image and in and through our lives individually and collectively. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Thank you, Ashley. Good evening. I'm Larry Gadbaugh. I have the privilege of serving as the CEO of First Image. I joined this mission just before the disaster of 9/11, 2001. And here we are in the twilight zone of 2020. There's no place I'd rather be, joining you as bright lights of hope, piercing the smoke with the fresh air of the conviction and compassion of Jesus. Your involvement with us in this mission will unleash God's love and hope to countless youth, women, babies, and men throughout our community. I know this because people like you have been God's instruments in impacting the lives of hundreds of thousands of our neighbors facing unsupported pregnancy through the Pregnancy Resource Centers of First Image over the last 36 years. God raised up First Image as an outreach of the people of Jesus so that women and men can be awakened to God's call to be life givers. Together with you, we're able to open the eyes of the blind. We want people to clearly see the reality that every person conceived in the womb is made in the image of God, a human person who we are called to love and protect because God has a purpose for us. Tonight, we join together to shine this light into the lives of students, men and women who otherwise are left alone trying to find love, meaning, hope in their sexual experiences, their relationships, fearing their pregnancy, and carrying the burden of their past abortions. Fueled by the love and truth of Jesus, First Image continues to advance this mission together with your partnership in the midst of a city that is burning in pain, polarized with racial tension, fighting for political power, and isolated with fear from the global pandemic. It is here that God has called you and I to love our neighbors, rising above the culture wars to lift up hope for mothers facing unsupported pregnancy, adults and students struggling with their relationships and sexual decisions, and women and men burdened with the pain of past abortion experiences. We bring these neighbors compassion and hope with God's vision for life and relationship that is countercultural. Shortly, you'll see and hear people share how God is capturing people with His grace and truth. In our pregnancy resource centers, we're introducing mothers and fathers to their baby, the person in the womb, through the wonder of the ultrasound, so they can confidently embrace being life givers through parenting or adoption and protecting them from being pressured toward abortion. With the Reality Project in public and private schools, awakening students to consider that our longings for meaningful, lasting relationships point them to the countercultural vision for sex and relationships that we were created for. In our abortion recovery small groups, which we call HEART, lifting women and men from the crushing weight they live with from the guilt and shame of their past abortions by connecting them to Jesus and His cleansing, freeing, liberating presence and power. Through these programs, the truth of the image of God and the life-changing power of the gospel awakens people to the hope and the future for which God has designed them. The First Image mission has always faced big challenges. It can seem that today's obstacles in this chaotic culture have become magnified. But we serve the Lord Jesus, who has conquered death and who empowers us with His love for our neighbors. Tonight, you're going to be asked to give, and I invite you to prayerfully consider how you will partner in this vital work. Last year, we told you that we would be increasing our digital outreach to our clients by 300% to help them find us. You have helped us do that, and it's made a difference. Up until the pandemic, we were seeing an average increase in the number of clients coming to our centers and have seen a 36% increase in the number of women who say they found us through the internet. And even though the pandemic has made our work challenging in a variety of ways, we've still been able to bring new services to our clients in this season. Over this last year, we've added testing for STIs, sexually transmitted infections, to our services. We have hired and trained new nurses to administer these tests and talk to our clients about their relationships and sexual practices. We have been blown away by the impact of these conversations. 62% say the interaction has impacted their decisions about the sexual practices they engage in, and an additional 22% say it has reshaped the way they make decisions about these practices. This reminds us that when we choose to enter into people's lives and talk about the deeper things, God shows up. Because of the pandemic, we've also added a service we had been considering adding for some time: telemedicine. We now have the ability to meet virtually with our clients when they are either unable or not ready to come to us. During this season, we have also been training our staff and volunteers for deeper understanding and connection with our diverse cultural and ethnic community. We serve a diverse population, and it's vital that we serve them well. For us, all issues of personhood and the image of God hang together, and so we are working to love our neighbors of color well. As always, we will walk into the new abnormal, trusting in Jesus' presence and power to change hearts and transform lives, beginning with ours. We can't do this without you. Thank you for joining us in this gala. I invite you to join us in this mission to introduce and lead women, men, students, and babies to God's way of life for them, to give them hope and a future.
Thank you, Larry. I know our church has been really encouraged by Larry's compassionate care and strong leadership to these sensitive issues that we as a church want to be engaged with. Our church even had Larry come and preach on a Sunday, and he shared the story about how he and his son shop at Winco, and he told his son very strongly, we are the kind of people who shop at Winco. And that sermon had a big impact on me because now our family shops at Winco. So thank you for that, Larry. Well, if you haven't noticed, things are a little bit different this year here at the Gala. We're not all together in the same room, which is unfortunate, but at least you don't have to dress up like me. Well, even though things are different this year, the ministry of First Image carries on, and we want to give you a taste tonight of how things are going in each part of First Image's ministry. And we're going to start with sex, to get your attention. So recently, former Reality Project director Luke sat down with the current director, Mackenzie, to talk about an opportunity to share a countercultural message rooted in the image of God to share with students in the greater Portland area.
So Mackenzie, when I started at First Image 10 years ago, I had your job. And somebody originally sent me a job posting for an abstinence presenter. That's what we called it back then. And that was initially like a terrifying prospect for me. I was imagining this kind of like mob rule scenario. I was going to go into a classroom and talk to high schoolers about sex and relationships. They were going to either throw things or rush me. But I was interested enough that I went and I listened to a presentation, and what I heard was something that was way more thoughtful, dynamic, hilarious, interesting than I was anticipating it was going to be. So that's my experience of how I got into the work you're doing now. How did you get involved?
So I know a previous presenter, and he talked about his job a lot and just all he learned, and it was just really cool to hear his experiences. And then there was a job opening, and he said, hey, I think that you would be great at this. And so I got to go see a presentation, and it's just like you said, it's engaging, it's dynamic. The students really enjoy it, but we're actually talking about subjects that matter and are helpful to them, help them to be healthier. And so it's just really great. I enjoyed, being in the audience of the presentation, and now I enjoy giving the presentations and meeting students and hearing their perspectives. They get to learn from what I have to say, and I get to learn from what they have to say. So it's just great.
So I feel like a lot has changed, even since I was doing your job. So I've been out of that role for about 7 years now and working in other areas of the ministry. And even in that amount of time, things have changed significantly. And so I wonder, what do you see right now as the core struggles that young people are dealing with regard to their relationships and sexuality?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing has to be isolation. I just see a lot of students that are having trouble connecting with real people, being vulnerable, having healthy relationships. They're not able to express themselves in real life relationships. There's just so much isolation, and you think especially with social media and just how prevalent it is in our world today, it's supposed to be this good thing that's supposed to connect us, but it's actually causing a lot of isolation.
Yeah, I mean, it strikes me that young people are living their life, their relationships and their sexuality largely in a virtual context, right? And so I know that in the context of our presentation, we're addressing other things that touch that too, things like pornography.
Yeah.
So how are you seeing those things play out in the lives of young people?
Yeah, pressure is just on a whole nother level. It's just on a whole nother level. Even for me, when I was in high school, it's just different. These young people, they know it's not healthy. They know it's stressful. They know they don't want to live that way. But they're in this place where they're so, they feel stuck because there's this fear of missing out. They don't want to miss out on something. There's just all that pressure, right? And so they're stuck, and they just need someone to break those walls and talk about these things so they don't have to feel so stuck and feel so alone.
So given that context, this kind of world that young people are inhabiting right now and struggling to live in, what is unique about what we do? What is it that the Reality Project does that helps young people to move forward? Yeah,
so the Reality Project, we get to go into public schools. We get to go into about 30 public schools around the Portland area. We are invited into health classes, and we get to have conversations with students about sex, about relationships, all the questions and the things that come up with those topics. We get to share, a healthy conversation about sex. We get to have a conversation with students about it and just be real and really engage them in thinking a little bit deeper about those subjects. They really enjoy it. I think they're looking for a place where they can feel safe to talk through these things. they want to have open conversation. They have so many questions they want answered, and they want to hear what we have to say, because we're just honest with them. We're just real with them, and we want what's best for them, and we see that they're super valuable. And so, and they're really receptive to that.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, I mean, it's a incredible opportunity, and to kind of step into the context that they're living in, and to interrupt that with this conversation that's at a whole other level. And we don't have to work super hard to get young people to go there. And I think that's something that really impressed me in doing this work, is they're ready to have that conversation. They will go to a level that is as deep as you're willing to go with them. And a lot of the presentation is built around leading students through a process of self-discovery, right? So we don't get to come in and just drop all of the things that they should know, but we get to help uncover those things that maybe that they're not even fully connected with. And we believe they're connected with those things because they're made in the image of God, but they maybe aren't fully connected with either the thing itself, or why they want good relationships, why they want healthy sexuality really at the end of the day. I think sometimes we get this vision of young people that they're just like when we think about things like hookup culture, like they're just, that's what they want, and what
It's just so funny though, because, we talk about that a little bit too. And, we go in a deep conversation about, how treating people that way. And, their response is always like, that's not okay. And they know these things, and they just need a place where they can feel free to say that. And, when I tell people what I do, they're always like, oh, wow, you talk to high schoolers. That must be so difficult. And they probably give you such a hard time. And, sometimes I get that. But most of the time, these students, they want to have these conversations. They're just searching for a place where they can have these conversations. And I think it does say a lot about the way God made them. And, that is something that is part of them. They're seeking for something good and something that is, healthy for them.
Absolutely. So there's probably a lot of people who are watching this that have young people in their lives. So what would you say to parents or youth leaders, or basically the many people who have some kind of connection with young people about how they navigate this? Like, what's a way forward in addressing things like relationships and sexuality in the lives of young people?
Yeah, definitely not an expert, but I mean, just from what I've learned.
You get paid to do it though, so
I think the most important thing we can do is to have a conversation. And I think both people in that conversation have fears, right? Parents have fears, kids have fears. Kids fear that they might get in trouble if they share something, or they fear that they're going to be misunderstood. And so there's these different barriers that come up for students. And so it's learning what those are and learning how to break through those things.
Yeah, and I think for parents also, a lot of their fears that you're expressing can hinder them even entering into the conversation. I know that if we haven't done our own work, because this conversation comes with a lot of personal baggage. And so it's really important too, if we're thinking about supporting young people and addressing healthy sexuality and relationships, that we also do that work in our own life, right? That we revisit our past and make sure that the blood and life of Jesus has covered that stuff, so that we can offer it to young people in a redemptive way.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm just really thankful that you're doing this. I did it for a bit. I'm kind of glad that I'm not doing it anymore. I feel like there's a lifespan on talking to high schoolers about sex and relationships all the time, although I hope you do it forever. But anyway, I just want to thank you so much for being willing to do this work.
Yeah, I love it. It's great, learning a lot. And, it's just something super helpful that we can all learn, so we can reach out to the people around us, have conversations. It's helped me in my own life, just being open and talking about things that matter. So yeah, thanks, Luke.
Wow, can you imagine doing the job that Luke did and that Mackenzie is now doing? I'm terrified to talk to my own kids about sex, and here they are. In fact, maybe I could hire Mackenzie to come do the talk with my kids. But I digress. First Image is not only blessed with a great team of presenters with the Reality Project, but the Pregnancy Resource Centers are staffed by some amazing nurses and support staff. We want to give you a glimpse of what it would be like for a client to come into one of the Pregnancy Resource Centers and have an ultrasound.
Hello, I'm Jenny. This is my husband,
Hi, I'm Chris.
and I work for First Image with the Pregnancy Resource Center in Beaverton. We're here today going to have an ultrasound.
Yeah.
Super excited. We are in our third and final trimester, and it has been definitely a different experience being pregnant during a pandemic.
Yeah, for example, I went in for our 8-week ultrasound, but that's it. They haven't let me into any of the other ultrasounds. So we're super excited today to get to see this ultrasound.
Yeah, it's definitely been just adapting with the times and finding different ways to kind of grow together while also celebrating the pregnancy, because it means being on speakerphone while I'm at the doctor's appointment so that Chris can still be involved, and working with other pregnant women has been fun because I'm a little bit further along than most of the women who come into the center, so that's been also a pretty cool aspect.
And as we get further along, it's exciting to see baby's growth and development, seeing that heartbeat, and just how much baby has grown.
Yeah, one of the fun things about having the ultrasounds this far along is seeing the movements and feeling the movements. The correlation is kind of crazy to be like, oh my goodness, like I know what's happening inside here.
And it's just a reminder of God's blessings and that miracle of life.
Totally.
As you just watch baby grow.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Anka. I'm one of the ultrasound nurses here at First Image, and today I'll be doing an ultrasound on Jenny. Jenny is one of our STI nurses, and this is her husband, Chris. Okay, I'm gonna have you lay back for me on this pillow, and I'll have your legs rest there for a minute. Okay, if you can just lift up your shirt for a minute, and then I'm gonna give you this to tuck into your pants. Very good. Perfect. And I did try to warm up the gel a bit, but we'll see how that goes. And typically, the ultrasounds that I do for our typical client are earlier on than Jenny, because they're very, very early on, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. But Jenny's 32 weeks, so we'll be looking to see here. Oh, there's the heartbeat. Right there, see that?
Yeah.
So sweet.
Special.
Let's make that a little bit bigger. So every time we do an ultrasound, it's one of the things that we look for, to see the heartbeat and to measure it and to show it to the mom. It's one of the things that they are always so glad to see, is that heartbeat.
Oh, totally.
And so you see the brighter aspects here are bone, and so you can see the little.
Hi, baby.
Yeah. All right, let's see what's up here. Oh, there's that profile. Look at your baby.
Hey there, baby Belle.
Hand up by the face. Oh, look at that.
There's the baby.
Look at those little hands.
One of the other things that we're looking for when we do the ultrasounds is to show the doctor the location of the pregnancy. We don't have to worry about this one because this baby's big. And then the third thing we look for is to measure the baby and see how far along they are, so we can give the moms and the doctors an idea about their due date, and you can see the heartbeat right here.
Yeah.
Down here.
It's a strong heartbeat.
The last ultrasound baby was hiccuping a bunch and moving all around. Looks like baby might be resting a little bit more.
I'm just gonna It's a lot different doing this ultrasound when the baby's 32 weeks than when the baby's 6 weeks.
There's a whole lot more to see.
There's a whole lot more to see. And when the baby's 6 weeks, it just looks like like a diamond ring basically, because you have the yolk sac, and then that's bigger than the baby most of the time, and then you have a tiny little baby, but you can still see a heartbeat with that. So that's really impressive for the clients to see, because they're not expecting to see such a tiny little baby, and then to see the heartbeat. You can see all the ribs here. And the backbone, see that? Yeah. When we do a 6 weeks ultrasound, which is when we start offering them, the baby's super, super tiny. And so we'll be able to see a heartbeat, and that's very exciting for the mom. It shows them instantaneously that there is a life and that there is a baby on the inside. It shows them what God tells us that He's doing in the deeper places of our bodies, right? As women, God weaves this life into being. And so what words cannot express, this picture shows them in an instant, and they are able to then move from that place of maybe uncertainty or indifference towards just a pregnancy to a place of, wow, this is my baby. And so that's our hope here, that as you contribute to First Image, you help us to show our clients, the women who come in, that it's not just a pregnancy, but that life is growing within their bodies, that there is a heartbeat, that there is a baby, that it's a tiny human, and then they can then move from a place of uncertainty or indifference, just feeling like it's just a pregnancy, it's not a big deal, to a place of, there's a life, this is my baby, and I'm gonna take ownership and give this baby a chance to have life outside of the womb. Thank you.
Isn't Anka amazing? How generous of Jenny and Chris to allow us into such an intimate experience in their life like that. Although I was a little concerned that everyone was wearing a mask but the baby. Well, at First Image, we not only offer compassionate care to women facing unsupported pregnancy, but we also offer hope and healing from the burden of a past abortion through our heart program. We have the privilege now to hear from Lydia, one of the graduates of that program.
My name is Lydia. I am from Zimbabwe and I'm 33 years old. So growing up, we attended the Joan Marangi Church, which is like an apostolic African church, usually originated in Zimbabwe. And I wouldn't say it is a Christian church because their belief systems are so different from what I know now. For example, men are supposed to have more than one wife, hence my father had 3. Also, girls are not are supposed to get married when they're at the age of 13, and we're not supposed to keep our hair. As a rule in the church, girls were supposed to go for virginity testing, whereby elderly women will physically check to see if the girls were still virgins, and if they were not, they were then forced to marry, or they were given away by their families. So during these virginity tests, we would wake up early in the morning and go for checking. And in most of the cases, I believe that these old women would just lie, or they were bribed. I don't know. How I know this is because when I was 14, I went for virginity testing, and they said I was no longer a virgin when I haven't slept with anybody. I was devastated because my father did not want me to go to school beyond grade 7. He, however, was convinced to send me, and he made a deal with me that he will allow me to go as long as I go for these virginity tests. So when I was lied about that, I thought this was the end of my education journey. I thought probably my dad was going to kill me because he always threatened that if me or my sister were going to fail the virginity test, he was going to kill us. So I cried hard. I pleaded with my mom for her to do something, and she convinced my dad that we could go to another province, to another church gathering, so that we can get a second opinion. And when that happened, I was cleared. It, however, damaged my childhood because back in my village, people did not take the second result. Throughout my secondary years, I was called names. I was insulted. And girls were warned against playing with me because everybody thought that I had slept with somebody. So I didn't like my secondary school years. So after my secondary school, I went on to do my high school. And when I finished high school, my parents could no longer afford for my education. But I always wished I could go to college. So my uncle and his wife then chipped in and decided they were going to pay for my college education. So I went on and did my undergraduate in biotechnology in Zimbabwe. And when I finished, I started working as a teacher. During that time, my dad passed. When my dad passed away, I stopped going to church. Not just at this church, I just disconnected. I did everything that he didn't want me to do. I then got a scholarship to go to China. I spent 2 years in China, and I came back. In 2016, I got pregnant. I was pregnant with somebody I knew I couldn't live with. And at that point, I just thought I was not in a position to be a mom. I thought my career was just starting. So I turned to a best friend of mine and asked if there was anything I could do. He referred me to a doctor who then assisted me with an abortion. 2 months later, found myself in the United States trying to start a PhD in chemistry. That's when I realized what I did was not worth it. I struggled academically in my first year. I failed all the entrance exam, and all the time I'm thinking it's because God is angry at me. I started drinking. I hated myself. After 2 years, I met someone in 2019, and it felt special. But because it was special, I started getting scared. I started replaying my abortion in my head. And I'm thinking, if only he knows what I did. I wanted to tell him, but I couldn't. About 4 months into the relationship, I couldn't do it anymore. I started feeling suicidal. I remember one day I was in my room late at night. I'm looking down from my room, and I started wishing I was in my old apartment that was in the 10th floor. I fell down to the ground and I was crying. I was just saying, God, I don't want to feel like this. I sat down on my computer, and I think I googled something like Christian counseling for post-abortion stress or something. I think 3 or 4 organizations came out. I left a voice notes. I was like, can someone call me? I need help. I think about 2 days later, I got a call from Heart. And I think I talked to Mindy. And she asked me what was the earliest day I could see her. And when I saw her, I cried. I cried so hard. I really wanted to cry, but I never had the chance. It felt good just crying with somebody watching. When the group started, I was relieved. During our first meeting, it was good just to sit there and listen to all the group members sharing their story. It was good to listen to the facilitators, Mindy, Cindy, and Chris, sharing their story as well. It really built trust and I felt comfortable. And it was good for the first time to share my story. It was good just to be seen by so many people in my group crying, and they understood why I was crying. Because it was almost like I was not allowed to mourn my baby because I had made the decision. But I was in pain. And I really just wanted to cry, but I wasn't allowed. Throughout the Bible study, I have had different emotions depending on the topics that would have been covered. Sometimes I feel better, sometimes I feel good, sometimes I go home and I feel like I'm worse than I was before. It took me time to realize it was all for the good. I never connected my childhood to decisions that I have made in life. And I have never told my friends about my childhood because for me, I just wanted to forget about it. But the Heart program forced me to go back there and really revisit my childhood and address everything from my childhood. I started understanding, despite what I have done, God still loves me. I enjoyed the Bible studies. I would read the chapters as I'm doing the homeworks and I'm meditating. Psalms 51, on Psalms 19, and you could hear God talking to me. I'm forever grateful for the time I spent with Heart. It was hard going to school and having to do all those assignments, attend the meetings. It was hectic, but I am grateful. I'm grateful that I went through that. I'm grateful for the lessons I learned. I'm grateful for the great people that were in my group, for the support that I just got from everyone. There was a lot of reading, homeworks to do. There was a lot of writing to do. But when I finished, I thought that was the best decision I ever made. And I at that moment, I believed God had a purpose for me. I was praying that God, I want this relationship I have had with you whilst I'm going through Heart to persist. And that whole experience of just having a deeper fellowship with the Lord have really changed my life. Just having a personal relationship with Him. Not only my spiritual life have improved, but also just the quality of life, my education. I thought I was not going to finish this PhD, but after going through the hard program, it's almost like I just needed to address some things in my life for me to have a clear picture of God's purpose in my life, including my career life. I felt the weight taken off my shoulders. Yes, I have had my secret. That was, honestly, I think it was like burdening me. I'm grateful for the hard program, and I hope one day I'll be able to help others find their way back to Christ, despite what they would have done. I'm doing well in school, and I'm anticipating graduating on time. This has been a blessing in disguise. I might not have liked how it went about, but I'm glad it did.
Wow, what an incredible story. We are so thankful that God has brought Lydia through so much. You know, stories like Lydia's show us what happens when God's people enter into the pain of others with the hope of the gospel. Our prayer is that the Lord would continue to bring people like Lydia to the staff and counselors of First Image, and that they might begin to know the freedom and life that only the gospel can bring. Well, finally, we have the privilege of hearing from the medical director of First Image, Dr. Drea Olmsted, who will be bringing the keynote address this evening.
I had performed abortions for 5 years, but this time felt different. I was in the middle of infertility treatment and so desperately wanted to be a mother. The patient was in the room waiting. I had never met her. I felt stuck. After the abortion, I came out of the room and cried, "How can I take life from somebody else when I so desperately want it myself?" That was the last abortion I ever did. 10 years later, at the end of a busy call day, a woman came in with abdominal pain. I reviewed her medical history with her and asked her if she had had any complications from her abortion. And she looked at me and said, "You should know you did it." I realized that that was the same patient, and my heart sank. We made a plan to help her with her pain and for her to come back a few days later. After she left, I poured through her chart and realized that I conceived with my son 3 days after I did her abortion. I dropped to my knees and asked for forgiveness and felt the grace of God pour over me. She returned a few days later and she was feeling better. I asked if I could share something with her, and she gave me permission to share the story of hers being the last abortion I ever did. She wept as I shared my story and told me it was the worst decision she ever made and wished that she had never gone through with it. Her sister was in the room at the time of the abortion and had had an unplanned pregnancy and had placed her baby for adoption. She said she wished she had also had the courage to do the same and had talked many friends out of abortion since. I looked at her with tears in my eyes and said, "Will you forgive me?" And she gently replied, "Yes." Through the experience of performing abortions and the subsequent 20 years of pro-life work, I have become passionate about finding common ground to begin the conversations. I have close friends who are pro-life, and I have close friends who are convicted that abortion is a crucial way to help and support women. Hopefully, many of you are sitting around a table watching this tonight. God brings us to the table to sit with people who don't look like us, live like us, or vote like us. Yet, He calls us to stay at the table. How can we stay at the table when it feels so uncomfortable? The table is a place of commonality and nourishment, yet it can be a place of conflict. When is the last time you looked at your Thanksgiving table? How can we sit and stay at the table? Most importantly, we need to listen. Really listen. Active listening is not thinking about your next counterpoint. It's putting yourself in the other person's seat and trying to understand where they're coming from. It's showing empathy and not arguing somebody into your point of view. Slow down the conversation with pauses and frequently paraphrase what you've heard. Trent Horn, in his book, Persuasive Pro-Life, states that by not talking instead listening intently to what the person is saying, you can let the steamroller run out of steam. As much as we want to believe we can change someone's mind, it's very rare to be able to argue someone into your point of view. Remember, it's okay to sit in uncomfortable silence. My partner, Halvik, listened to me. He asked questions instead of proclaiming pro-life statements. He was patient and encouraged me to wonder and wrestle with my convictions. He brought me to my first pregnancy resource center, Gala, where the speaker told her story of getting pregnant after a gang rape as a teenager. She was sent away to have the baby and place her for adoption. 21 years later, her daughter found her, and as they embraced, they shared their lifelong prayer that they would each know the love of Jesus. The speaker then looked at the audience and said, "If God is the author of life, he doesn't make mistakes." At that moment, it was clear to me that abortion was not only something I was not ever going to do, but also a conviction that it shouldn't be done. It was just a few months later that I joined the Pregnancy Resource Center Medical Advisory Committee. My sister and brother-in-law also listened to me for years. They never pushed, argued, or shamed me for doing abortions. They sat in uncomfortable silence with me and they prayed. Today, they are my biggest encouragers in the fight for life. In addition to listening, we need to learn. We need to learn about the issue from both perspectives. When is the last time you read a pro-choice article? We need to break up the echo chamber and learn the other perspective instead of only listening to those who think like you. After I stopped doing abortions, I was invited to debate the abortion issue with the same people who taught me to do abortions. It was intimidating sitting before 250 people when I felt like 245 of them disagreed with me. To prepare for the debate, I read pro-choice literature so I could understand their perspective and start with common ground. We do have common ground because every one of us is created in the image of God, from the women to the preborn baby to the person we disagree with. We need to listen, we need to learn, we need to find common ground as a starting point and agree whenever possible. We don't always have to be right and always win. We also need to have the humility and wisdom to admit when we're wrong. In his book, Common Ground Without Compromise, Steve Wenger states that we should build common ground to begin a dialogue at the beginning of the argument. We should also retreat to common ground frequently throughout the argument, not to give up on finding the truth, but to gain necessary footing so we can move forward to a new consensus on what is true. If the argument we're having is like a car taking us to the beach of truth, then common ground is like the fuel. It's important to remember that in these conversations, we need to stop and refuel by returning to the issues we agree with. For example, most people believe that being a single parent with minimal support is challenging. My pro-choice friends enter into the conversation about the best ways to come alongside women who have decided to continue their pregnancy despite the extreme challenges they face. I have been involved with Young Lives, which is Young Life for teen moms and their babies. We mentor, support, and encourage these moms in their journey. They are the most discriminated and shamed group on campus. Offering this as a starting point, most people can embrace the importance of coming alongside these courageous women. Finally, we need to be able to stay at the table with empathy and compassion. And we can when we remember that Jesus is in the center of the table. We are all made in the image of God, and He binds us together. The staff and volunteers at First Image listen, learn, find common ground, and intentionally place Jesus in the center of a controversial table. That's why I said yes to being the volunteer medical director 12 years ago. The Medical Advisory Committee works with our incredible Director of Nursing, Anka, to create centers of medical excellence, compassion, and grace. And this is crucial because the people at the table are real women who are making life-altering decisions. So let's stay at the table for them. Thank you.
Well, now that you've heard all these stories, we'd encourage you to respond. The pregnancy centers have continued to stay open throughout this pandemic, providing compassionate care to women experiencing unsupported pregnancies. The challenges, of course, in the season are great, and it's vital that our communities have access to this life-affirming care. Your gift makes that possible. We would encourage you to give even right now. You can do that easily and securely through text to give by visiting our website. If you would like to give by check, there's a response card and return envelope that has been provided for you in the packet. And if you're having any issues with giving and you need some assistance, the First Image staff is standing by and happy to talk to you by phone. There should be a number coming up on your screen. Please leave a message if you don't reach someone right away. You should be seeing a slide up on your screen in a moment. Take this time to prayerfully consider your giving. We don't think you will regret it. God has been so generous to us, and as believers, this can be our joyful response tonight. Thank you. We also want to thank you for giving your time tonight to share in this virtual experience with us. Thank you for listening. Thank you, hosts, for all that you did to make this evening possible. We also want to thank our event sponsors, especially Golson Scruggs, for helping to cover the cost of this event. Our prayer is that whether it was a conversation you had around dinner or dessert, or something that struck you in one of the videos, that you will take a small step of faithfulness in affirming the image of God in others and supporting God's design that He has for us as made in His image. So on behalf of the First Image team, thank you and good night.